So if you've demonstrated a best effort, right, if you demonstrate that you are trying to comply with the laws, and understand, in terms of paying taxes and registering at SZV, having your work permit in place actually is not an obligation, therefore not an excuse not to be registered and paying your taxes and not to be paying your premiums into SZV. So regardless of your legal status, you are obligated to pay your taxes and your premiums to SZV. So at least if you show, if a business can demonstrate that they are in the process of working towards compliance and they're making their best effort, we will work with you. However, if you have just a flagrant disrespect for our laws and for our needs as a country, then you will find that the controls will continue and the measures will become more and more stringent. Our approach is slightly different, and this is one of the things that we will discuss in our debriefing next week. As I've mentioned, we're looking for the cooperation with the Ministry of Romi. We are planning a geographic approach. So rather than inspectors working from their offices, from their computers, and generating lists of which businesses they're planning on controlling, we are planning on controlling all businesses eventually. So we are taking a geographic approach and working from one end or different sections working towards the other. So my message is, we are taking compliance seriously. We are working across ministries to make sure that there's an improvement in compliance. Be proactive, get ahead of it, find out what your obligations are, and we will help you to comply. Thank you very much.
First of all, I think I want to extend my condolences to the family of Manfred Kanagita, who passed away and who will be put into rest today, someone who I've known for many years, and I always describe him as a person with a heart the size of a mountain. May he rest in peace. I was visited this week by the Minister of Finance of Curaçao, Mr. Kenneth Gijsberta. We had an extensive meeting, discussed the common issues that we had to address, amongst which the central bank. The two managing directors of the central bank would be leaving this year because they would reach the pensionable age. One will be departing sometime in the middle of this year, and the other one in November. So it's quite urgent that the two ministers of finance have to seek and start the process of finding people to replace them. We also had the opportunity to talk about de-risking. De-risking, as you know, is a vexing problem that the islands are faced with. We had made some headway, and the United States was prepared to sit with us and work things out together with Jamaica. But the cooperation of the Netherlands was somewhat reluctant. That continues to be the case, principally because, in the opinion of the Dutch government, something has to be done with the central bank. Well, next month, there's going to be the semi-annual IMF meeting in Washington, which both ministers of finances will be attending, as well as the Minister of Finance of the Netherlands. And it is intended that we're going to sit down at that time and talk further about this de-risking problem. As far as we're concerned, we have done all that we can in terms of what needs to be done with the central bank, and there's got to be some understanding that this problem is so severe and goes to the heart of our economy that is not something that can be taken lightly. I'm also pleased to share with you that we have the numbers in, revenues numbers in for January and February, and they both look quite good compared to last year. So it's a positive signal. Of course, one bird flying north does not mean to say that summer is here, but at any rate, it's not something negative, and it looks positive, and I hope we can keep this trend up and the economy will continue to perform positively.
Last week, I mentioned that we had just gotten the ransomware report hot from the press. It will be discussed tomorrow in a special meeting of the Council of Ministers, along with the head of ICT, the Secretary General, ICT, the head of ICT, the Secretary General, and some others, along with the Council of Ministers. So we won't have a public discussion as yet on that, but just to keep you informed as to the developments. One of the things, I think I've mentioned it last week, that they have said is at least they know how the virus entered into the system. I think 4 specific computers were mentioned, so I guess in doing their research, they ascertained that it came from 4 specific computers. One of the recommendations that will be discussed as well is that they're saying, well, begin with limiting the accessibility from certain sites, such as Yahoo, Hotmail, Facebook, etc. But also, they recommended to look into the possibility of having separate servers for the systems, for the civil registry, and for DIV, our central administration system. Good to mention is also that I've instructed the Secretary General of General Affairs, and he has, in the meantime, filed a case with the public prosecutor on the attack. So if someone is maliciously attacking government's system and hacking into it or trying to plant viruses into it, it's a criminal offense, and we have decided to file a case with the public prosecutor in order for them to assist in the investigation into possible wrongdoing. As far as the post office is concerned, this week a meeting was held, and a decision will be taken soon as well on the way forward. But so far, the recommendation to the Council of Ministers would be to appoint former Minister Dennis Richardson in charge of sort of, let's say, a change manager, where he will look into the present. As I've said, one of the main problems the post office has is when we took responsibility from the central government in 2010, all the commercial activities in the post office were basically taken out, and the profitable part of the post office was left with the St. Martin Postal Services, and the money-making juicy things were taken out. Secondly, we inherited all the staff. I think it's something like 34 people, and the actual operations responsibilities of the post office does not require that many people. So you have an operation that is doomed to bankruptcy, so to speak, if you're not generating enough funds to maintain the cost of operation. So Mr. Dennis Richardson will be asked to look into it, make recommendations as to the downsizing of the staff, and some of the personnel have been working for government from in the days of the post office being a branch of government, responsibility of government. Some of these have been civil servants now for over 30 years, some of them. So we may have a package that will consist of phasing out some of them, let's say through some sort of an early pension scheme, or we will move some of them to different government departments, whether it's immigration, whether it's at a prison, whether it's wherever, we don't know. I'm saying don't hold me as to we are saying we are sending them here. In government in general, we will look at the possibility of placing some of them there for the duration of their time as a public servant, and right-size it so that you can streamline the operations to suit their responsibility. The situation at the civil registry has also been normalized. Over the weekend, last week, it was mentioned that they were closed for 2 days. This didn't have anything to do with any virus. There was a foul odor smell coming from one of the rooms, and at a given moment, they called in the fire department to make sure that no equipment or no electricity shortage was the case. When they did their research, they recommended that the place, particularly the ceiling, be thoroughly cleaned because there were leftovers and droppings from rats and rodents and birds and whatnot. So a company was brought in to clean up the place over the weekend, and I think it was Monday, operations were fully back up and running. So their systems have not been affected. It was no virus attack that closed them down. It was to clean up the place because of the smell that we have been encountering. Before I went to Aruba, I had mentioned that I was not going to get into a back and forth as far as the issue with Minister Plasterk is concerned about the integrity chamber. After our meeting in Aruba, I also said that we had agreed that no information will be shared about the meeting, but I've taken note of a letter he had sent me, appeared in one of the newspapers. So since I have been asked the question, not in here, but outside of here, he said, well, let me be proactive. And I think if the letter from Plasterk to St. Martin was published, I think it is only but fair that the reaction from St. Martin to Minister Plasterk also be published. So I have made copies of the letter that I had presented to Minister Plasterk while in Aruba, and that letter will be shared with whoever interested in having a copy. Of course, it was a letter in Dutch, and his was in Dutch as well. So your ability to get that information to the media, to the public in English, I'm sure you can handle that. So far, my opening and closing remarks. I'll be running off. Have a good day.
Minister Lee, you spoke a lot about the controls on Friday. I received a circular that was sent by an housing bureau actually telling their clients not to cooperate, and that if excessive force was used by the inspectors that conducted that control on Friday, that their lawyers are ready to take action. Did you, while being part of this control, encounter employees that are working for a particular housing bureau that I understood have been under investigation for how long? Did that happen? And can you tell us a little bit more about that? Because I just sent you the circular.
Yeah. Thank you, Bibi. I just saw it on my phone. There's a couple elements that are in the circular that I think, first of all, are interesting to touch on. Like I said, I was with the team the entire time. At times, the teams would split up because we had sufficient people, but always in the same location. And so, for example, one comment that I heard is, well, yeah, but the inspectors came during our dinner service. So, of course, we're going to businesses when there's employees there, right? There's no point to go to do a control when a restaurant's closed or there's no customers, because you won't see who's actually working. But I saw that the staff, the team that went, and again, hats off to the team. I think they did an excellent job. It was a very long day. All of them were extremely courteous. All of them were extremely professional. At no time was there any type of behavior that I would consider harassment, rude, or anything of the nature. As a matter of fact, to give you an example, we went to one place where there was a gentleman conducting a sales seminar, a sales pitch. We said, let the gentleman finish his pitch. When he has a moment, come out and bring his identification. When we went to restaurants, at no time was any service disrupted. At no time did we say, okay, look, drop the plates, it's time to go. Finish the service. We're not there to disrupt anybody's business. Again, but you cannot allow people who are undocumented to continue to work. But again, in no way was any business disrupted. Another question in there that was, or another statement in the letter was about the labor inspectors don't have the right to ask for tax information. And this is one of the discussions that we're going to have within Council of Ministers, because every ministry's inspection department is regulated by law. Every ministry's department, and this doesn't make business sense, can only ask particular questions and have very specific jurisdictions, very specific authorities. So that is why we went with a multidisciplinary team. That's why. They're right. The labor inspectors are not allowed to get into tax issues. But we brought tax inspectors who are allowed to ask tax issues, right? That's why we brought immigration officers, because they can ask questions about your residential status. So I took note of the letter. I find it kind of distressing. My recommendation to businesses who are using outsourcing bureaus is make sure that you are on top of what you're contracting. Make sure that you understand that if the people working are not compliant with the laws and they are removed from the business because they don't have a work permit, it's going to affect your operation. So make sure you know what you're doing.
Forgive me if I forget the date or if I have the date wrong. I believe it was February 8th or either 9th. You made an announcement regarding an audit for the St. Martin Medical Center, and then you went on to say a broader audit in the healthcare system. I asked you earlier this week or last week to give us an update. Is that audit going to take place? How soon? Because you had given, I think, a time frame of between 4 to 5 weeks. We are almost there. Do you have a date for that audit? Is it going to take place, and how broad would be the scope?
It's still in progress in discussions, working together with the inspectorate and we are also, I think I mentioned, looking at SOAB doing an operational audit for SZV, and also looking at bringing in a consultant to assist with putting a baseline in for the hospital, working towards a JCI accreditation. So we are working on multiple approaches simultaneously.
Let me ask a follow-up. If SMMC is JCI accredited, does that mean they will be exempted from the inspectorate conducting their audit or their general inspection to guarantee quality care on St. Martin? Because
No.
it's kind of mixed up for me.
No. Look, remember, one of the aspirations for the country is to build a new hospital. And a hospital is simply a building. So in order to make sure that the staff, the services are towards an international standard, that's where we're using a JCI accreditation as the objective, as the standard to which we're working towards, right? This is simply working towards helping them to establish the protocols, training, setting those standards on an international basis in order to set a proper plan going forward to make sure that operations and staff are also up to par with a new hospital.
Thank you for your questions, Phoebe. We move over to the Daily Herald. Andrew Dick, you have the floor.
Yes, Minister Jacobs, is this concerning the Miss Lally Center? Now, I know that that's under justice. However, the education of the kids still falls under the Ministry of Education. We understand that there's a shortage of teachers there. Are you looking into this?
Good morning. The Lally Center does fall under justice. The education section, we've had as ministries discussions about it in terms of what should be in place. After inspection had been done by the ministry, they had ascertained that persons were needed, and they did hire some educators, but it is not up to par. It is not up to par in the sense of being able to do that. It is not within, I don't have a budget specifically for that institution. So we still have to figure out how we will be able to meet that need. But the ministries together have met and will continue to collaborate to see how we can alleviate the problems there. It has our attention. It just has not been resolved as yet.
Thank you.
Alita from the Daily Herald.
Thank you, Giselle. Good morning, Minister. Minister Gibson, it's great you've announced that the figures for January and February have been great. I want to ask specifically about the transfer tax when land is sold. Do you have, I'm certain probably you don't have it out of your head, what has been collected for the first 2 months? And my question is based on the fact that several developers and people selling land, also people selling property, are having quite a hard time getting their made briefs from the cadastre. It's taking very long. Of course, they're paying for this service. They're not getting the paperwork. Without the paperwork, the land cannot be transferred. That means government has to wait longer, or government loses if the deal falls through due to negligence or lack of getting the stuff in a timely manner. Government loses the 4% in the transfer tax. Are you seeing your transfer tax number down in the last couple of months? Do you know what's going on with the cadastre?
No, that long question has to do with, am I seeing indeed the difference compared to last year? No. The transfer taxes revenues have not varied substantially from what the revenues were last year.
Also staying with the finance, next week in the Parliament, there's going to be a piece of legislation to do with the financial supervision of money couriers. Can you give an insight into what that will be? I think it has to do, yesterday the chairwoman of Parliament mentioned that it had to do with a part to do with a harmonization law. Can you give an insight into what it is exactly that's going to Parliament?
Yeah, the harmonization law is actually a law that is adopted by all of the countries of the Dutch Caribbean islands. It is standard, so there's no variation between what the law says in Curacao, Aruba, or St. Martin. St. Martin was running a little behind, and Parliament is now addressing the harmonization law for St. Martin. As far as it concerns these money transfer companies, we have completed what we have to complete in that respect. And that's why now it's before Parliament to get it ratified, the same way it was ratified in Curacao and Aruba.
Also on taxes, TOT, I know that has been a sore point for you, the fact that people are buying more online, etc. Do you continue to see a trend where TOT has been affected in the first 2 months of the year?
Well, just to qualify that remark, actually, or your question, that TOT has been a source of frustration from my part. It's not. The TOT was simply an explanation as to one of the several reasons that could have caused TOT revenues to decline last year. Online purchases is one of them. Not that it affects me. I buy online just like anybody else. So it has nothing to do with my view in terms of people buying online. It's simply that given the increase of purchases online, it has an effect on TOT. So just like a camera, as you use from time to take a picture, I was simply taking a picture of that phenomena. TOT revenues are up this year compared to last year.
Thank you. We move over to the second round. Bibi, once again, you have the floor.
Giselle, may I just ask a question? Are we going to have our second round full 3 questions?
We are looking at the time, so for the moment, yes, go ahead.
Thank you very much. Minister Lee, when I ask you about the SMMC and the audit, you gave an explanation, but still there's something missing that I didn't get clearly. You stated in your first announcement that this audit is an audit called by you, because you wanted an audit, will take place within 5 to 6 weeks, if I'm correct. I'm asking you if we're still in that time frame period, or if it has extended, or if there is some bacchanal going on between SMMC still, because you said that there was a strain in relationship between the inspectorate and the SMMC, and for that reason you were looking for an independent audit.
I think the time frame is sliding a little bit because there are ongoing discussions between SMMC and the inspectorate in terms of how the audit would be executed. Keep in mind, when I spoke originally about an audit, I was speaking about an audit of the entire healthcare chain, because I believe that the whole system needs an independent review, of which part of that is, would include obviously the SMMC. So we are looking at the broader independent appraisal of our healthcare system, and then the discussion between the inspectorate and SMMC in terms of how that audit will be conducted is ongoing, but I expect that it will happen, but I think the time frame probably will get slid back a little bit.
All right. You also mentioned that you contracted SORB to audit,
Process of,
or in the process of contracting SORB for USZV. Don't you have an agreement already in place? Because I remember a press release and photograph that was sent out by your ministry where the inspectorate will audit the referral department of SORB. Is that now off the table?
I assume that they're doing that. This is a broader
Audit.
scope than just the referral department.
Thank you very much, Minister Lee, for the clarifications on those questions. Minister Jacob, I just got a question from someone, and I had to open my phone so I get the name of the school correct. Do you know the school Milo Piccini, an American University for Integrated Science? It's located, it's in Martin School of Medicine, somewhere in Colby. Did you have any kind of discussions with the owner, and do you know if that school is bankrupt and is now closing?
Unfortunately, Bibi, no, I don't have any information, as you have asked, about any bankruptcy or closing of the school. As mentioned last week, it's the same school that I was asked about last week. Someone asked about it in any case, or referred to the person that you're mentioning. It's American University of Integrated Sciences, formerly the University of St. Eustatius. Yeah. And we have had no more communication with them since the last communication via the media. So I have no idea as to what the current status is.
Thank you for your questions, Bibi. We'll now move over to Mr. Dick for the last questions.
Yes, Ms. Jacobs, just one question concerning the vocational training school classrooms. I know that we've been going through this process for quite some time. Last time it had to go on bid. Any update where that is concerned?
Up to now, no final update as to whether the bid has been finalized by VROMI. So that is something that actually a meeting was to be held last week with head of new works to get an update on all the investment projects that we have pending, on hold, or stagnated for whatever reason, to get a proper update. And so that was not able to be held last week. But we will be pushing forward to get an update from the VROMI department within the week, so that by next week I'll be able to give you a better update on that.
Is there a a date yet for the Lionel Connor School?
Also with that, as I mentioned last week, there were some other repairs that needed to happen, and because of, you know, how things have to happen here, quotations needed to be had, etc. They're expecting that they will have a better idea by the end of the week as to when, what dates. So I'm be getting an update on that as well. So as I said before, the electrical upgrades, etc., had been done and finalized, but some other repairs that were necessary for the school to be able to move in still are pending.